back. We have traveled over to the scanning room, as you'll notice in front of me. This is where the patient would lie down on his or her back. The head goes here. I'll step aside, doctor. The rest is yours. Tell us what happens after that.
Okay. So before the patient actually comes in, the patient actually goes through a couple of testings, different kind of ways to stimulate the brain or relaxing the brain. For the purpose of what we do, there are two parts to the SPECT scan. There's one part that is called resting state. We're just kind of relaxing, calm your brain. And there's another part where we actually stimulate the brain by having them playing this really annoying game. And that really gets your brain going, and then we inject the radiopharmaceutical, and that change, obviously flows into the brain. And then this is it's called a three-headed camera. Most SPECT scanners are what's called two-headed cameras, but this is actually an older model, but it's actually three-headed. And three heads are great because you get more signal, so the resolution is much, much higher. And I think that's one of the reasons why we can actually see the kind of detail we can see with the brain and the flow and then all the different areas of the brain parenchyma that we can use to make the diagnosis. So a patient kind of goes in here, kind of this will kind of slide inside this little triangle. They just lie down and close your eyes and kind of relax, and some people fall asleep.
Do you give them any headphones with music or anything like that?
No, some people want that, but generally just lying still, the room's kind of dark and quiet, and they kind of fall asleep.
And they're in there for how long?
About 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, about 15 minutes, and the scan is done, and 24 hours later we'll do the second part, depending on which way we go. And that's pretty much it. And then we have a computer system in the control room that takes all the data and modifies it, and again we get the pictures that we need to make the diagnosis. But the overall process, really is painless. And do a couple of tiny little needle injections for getting the isotope inside. But other than that, there's really no dyes or anything, kind of problems that people may have with other tests. I think we're aware of some allergic problems that with some contrast dyes in CAT scan and MRI, but we really don't have that with the study. This is actually a functional analysis. So we're actually looking at the flow of the brain flow inside, inside the brain parenchyma, and depending on different areas of the brain, whether it's acting and being active or less than active, the brain flow changes. And by looking at that distribution, and these cameras detect those kind of changes in the brain, we're able to make some objective diagnosis and analysis of the brain and how that may relate, to the different problems that people may have.
Now, this is primarily for adults, I would imagine, men and women, but if you had a young child, maybe had a headache, brought into your office, you find a malignant tumor or something like that, will something like this spot something like that, or is that usually done through an MRI?
Generally an MRI.
Okay.
That'll be a much better way to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, generally I kind of limit the scanning more towards older children,
right.
Maybe teenagers, from 13 on. Sometimes I'll go down a little lower depending on the patient and how they, how they're able to actually lie still. That's really a big factor.
What's the most fascinating thing you have found that maybe you didn't expect to find, that when you pulled the patient back out, said thank you very much, and you suddenly looked at
different colors?
Right. You go, oh my gosh, I didn't expect this.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with unexpected areas of brain distribution. We have, of course, clinical data and all the history and all those things. So when we do the test, we have some preconception of, well, this patient may have this and such. We all do that. But coming out afterwards, you see areas like, wow, I didn't expect this area of the brain to be, functioning too much or too little. So that, when I have the consultation afterwards, is really gratifying to say, hey, I saw something like this in your history, and I didn't really see it, but based on the scan, I think you have a predisposition towards this that we didn't really suspect. We can be more objective and say, we think you have this. Let's talk about altering your treatment or doing something more focused this way. And I think that's really an important, gratifying thing.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating.